You ever wake up to find a laminated notice of violation, zip-tied to your front gate and you don't even live in an HOA? Yeah. That was the moment I knew something had gone real wrong. I'm talking about bold neon-colored paper with words like unauthorized structure and pending fine. Only problem? The structure they were referring to was my barn. My granddaddy's barn. Built in 1954 on land that's been in my family for 4 generations. Enter Karen. Blonde bob, fake pearls, SUV the size of a battleship. She and her little HOA gang had just moved into the new development that butted up against the south end of my ranch. 5 months in, and they were already acting like they owned the valley. But this stunt with the fake citation, this was war. I walked up to the gate that morning, coffee still in hand, wearing nothing but flannel pants and boots, stared at the sign for a full minute before laughing so loud my dog, Roscoe, came running. I crumpled that paper right in my hand. Didn't even bother calling, just drove my truck straight down to the new neighborhood and parked right in front of their community center, which, by the way, used to be my cousin's old hayfield before some developer bought him out. Karen strutted out like a Walmart discount attorney, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on like she was dodging paparazzi. She didn't say hello. She pointed at my license plate and said, "We've received multiple complaints about your encroachments." "Lady," I said, "you've received nothing but sunshine and audacity." She had the nerve to tell me I was in violation of her HOA's boundary codes. Like she didn't just say her HOA on my land. That barn is over 70 yards from their property line. I told her that, plain and simple. She pulled out a map, a printed Google Maps screenshot with a wobbly red line drawn with a marker. I said, "That's cute, but the county surveyor disagrees." She said, "We've redrawn the district limits for consistency." Redrawn, huh? And who gave you the power to play Moses with property lines? She blinked just once, then said, "This is just the first warning. Let me tell you something. I don't do warnings. I do facts." So I went home, dug out every deed, map, photo, and permit I could find. Then I called up a friend of mine, Jimmy Martinez. Works at the county records office. He pulled satellite images for the past 20 years and sent them to me with a big OL stamp that said, "No encroachment detected." I printed that sucker on glossy paper and marched it right back to Karen's little clubhouse during one of their HOA meetings, no less. Walked in, laid it on the table like a royal flush, and said, "I don't know who taught y'all how to read property lines, but you might want to stop letting your preschooler use a Sharpie." She tried to grab the papers, but I snatched him back. That's when one of the board members, a guy named Derek, looked like a tax accountant with a superiority complex, cleared his throat and said, "We'll take this under advisement." I said, "Take it to hell with you for all I care, but you're not touching my land." Now here's where it gets wild. 2 weeks later, I started getting no water pressure in the western fields. That's my irrigation line runs down toward the edge of the new neighborhood. I checked every valve, every spigot. Nothing. Dry as dust. So I hike out there, follow the pipe, and what do I find? A padlock. A goddamn padlock on my irrigation control valve, with an HOA tag zip-tied to it. Oh, I lost it. I didn't even call them. I walked back, fired up the bolt cutters, snipped that lock clean, and installed a new one. Then I followed the line farther down, and that's when I realized they'd tapped into it. Yep. They were siphoning water from my system to fill their decorative pond and run their little sprinkler show for the fake grass and roses they planted in soil that used to be cow pasture. So what did I do? I shut the whole damn system down, cut off every valve leading south. Then I disconnected the upstream pipe, capped it, and rerouted the line so they couldn't tap it again even if they tried. By the next afternoon, I had HOA members knocking on my door. One lady, Mary Beth, or Marybelle, or some sweet-sounding name for someone who's basically a honey-glazed snake, came asking, "Hi, we were wondering if you knew anything about the water situation." I just tilted my head and said, "Nope. You talk to Karen." She goes, "Well, she's at the town hall meeting trying to resolve this with the county." I said, "Good. She'll want to bring a lawyer." See, what Karen didn't know was that the land their entire neighborhood was built on, it used to be part of a disputed watershed zone. When my great-uncle sold the land decades ago, he sold it with a Clausian easement restriction that guaranteed all water rights stayed with us. It was buried deep in the paperwork, but it was airtight, meaning they couldn't legally use a drop of water from the main line without written consent. And I wasn't giving that to people who tried to bulldoze my family history with HOA newsletters and passive-aggressive fines. I showed the documents to the county, and the county lost it. They opened an investigation into the HOA for unauthorized water usage, property tampering, and violation of water rights. Turns out, Karen had approved the plumbing connection herself without filing a single permit. She thought no one would notice. She thought I was some backwoods rancher with no clue how law works. Well, turns out I studied environmental policy before I took over the ranch. Karen got called into a public hearing. Let me paint you a picture. She walks into that town hall wearing her signature blazer, hair teased like she's running for PDA president. But this time, there were reporters in the room, folks from other neighborhoods, county officials. She sat down like she still had control, but she didn't. They brought out documents, photos, even satellite data showing the exact point her crew tapped the line. One of the county engineers straight up said, "This is theft of a public utility protected under private easement law." Karen tried to blame the contractor. The contractor showed emails from her giving instructions. The crowd started murmuring. Someone in the back muttered, "Serves her right." You could feel the room turning. And me? I just sat there, hat low, arms crossed, watching. The county fined the HOA $75,000. They also issued a cease and desist, forced them to tear out the illegal piping and install their own water linear on their dime. Karen's little ornamental pond dried up in a week. The fake grass browned. The board turned on her like vultures on roadkill. 3 members resigned. A petition started circulating. And then came the eviction. Turns out, Karen wasn't just the HOA president. She was the host set it up as a private corporation to manage the neighborhood and collect dues. But after the water scandal, residents learned she was paying herself a monthly management fee and charging fines that weren't even legal. Folks were pissed. A group of homeowners called for a full HOA dissolution vote. It passed unanimously. Karen's power gone. The HOA disbanded. Their clubhouse? Sold. And Karen moved out 2 months later in the middle of the night. No goodbye, no apology. Just a rental truck and the sound of her heels on pavement. Last I heard, she's trying to start another community association in a different town. God help them. Me? I went back to fixing fences, riding with Roscoe, and watching the stars over my barn still standing, still proud. Sometimes neighbors swing by, bring beer, talk about the Great Water War like it's some kind of local legend. And every once in a while, someone will ask me if I feel bad about how it ended. I just smile and say nope, because out here, we don't steal from each other. We don't redraw lines. And we sure as hell don't let Karens turn legacy into landscaping. But hey, where do you draw the line between enforcing order and controlling lives? Thanks for listening. And if this story hit a nerve, don't forget to hit subscribe. Plenty more where that came from.